Dillon Danis might fight the former world's strongest man in his next fight after facing off with Eddie Hall, who has also fought MMA before, after Dillon Danis secured his first MMA win in over 6 years, which that is a big story of in its own. I mean, we know Dillon Danis, he has talked a lot of shit over these years, but he has finally gotten his win. I remember the Logan Paul fight where, people like myself were rooting for him to win, and he's come a long way, finally getting a win, even if it is against, let's be honest, a trash can. But Dillon Danis faces off with Eddie Hall after his win, and this is something that I think could happen. And also Dillon Danis, talks shit about Islam Makhachev, Khamzat Chimaev, and he confirms, look, he is serious about joining the UFC. Could this actually be something in the future? Do I think potentially Dillon Danis ever will join the UFC? Is this a serious thing? Let's get into it, guys. Dillon Danis versus Warren Spencer happened last weekend, and this was a fight that, honestly, I was curious, and Dillon Danis returned to MMA. You would expect him to do well because, yeah, I think a lot of people think Dillon Danis is just a clown, and he has definitely appeared that way these past years. How he looked in the Logan Paul fight didn't even look like he wanted to win the fight, didn't even look like he wanted to fight, period, through very little punches. So I understand why people probably think he's a clown, he can't fight, but if we're talking jiu-jitsu, this guy we know is a world-class jiu-jitsu fighter. I think most people probably know, but there is a lot of people that don't because, like I said, Dillon Danis makes it hard not to clown him. You know what I mean? So when it was announced that he was fighting MMA, I said, it's about time. Dillon Danis has talked about wanting to fight in the UFC, has talked about wanting to fight like Islam Makhachev, just crazy names, like literally elite guys, and he is nowhere close to it, but he got a step closer this last weekend with at least fighting in MMA and winning because, yeah, Warren Spencer, for those of you guys that don't know, he is, yeah, like I said, a bit of a trash can because I think he's a friend of Andrew Tate. He's boxed a few times. He has no MMA experience, and you could see that he had no MMA experience from the fight. Okay, so we get to Saturday night. Misfits has their first MMA event, which, first of all, I thought this Misfits card was fun. I think Misfits needs to do more stuff like this. MMA fights, real fights like that, have, some interesting, storylines with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't necessarily the best of the best, but we don't want to see people that are just fighting that don't care, if they win or lose, that are just doing this for a paycheck. Like, we know Luke Rockhold, Darren Till, they're in there to win. Their egos are on the line. We know that they care about this, that they're training, that we're at least going to see a good fight, and we saw good fights, and that's why I think this card was good. But Dillon Danis went in there against Warren Spencer. I thought it was the same thing because, Dillon Danis can't lose this guy. If he loses to Warren Spencer, I mean, he would probably get clowned for the rest of his life. I don't even know if he could return to MMA, but he beats Warren Spencer in 15 seconds with a guillotine choke. And like I said, this is what you would expect from Dillon Danis, but it was really fast. Like 15 seconds, I mean, I don't think anybody would have expected that. And I mean, at first, I will say I didn't like Dillon Danis's performance, even though it was a 15-second performance. This is a guy that he should have finished in 15 seconds, and especially seeing that the guy, Warren Spencer, initiating the grappling for some strange reason, I'd expect this fight to go that way. But Dillon Danis did get, he got landed, I think it was like a check hook or a jab or something like that. He looked hittable, you know what I mean? And come on, if he's in the UFC against guys who can defend takedowns, who aren't just going to stupidly initiate grappling against Dillon Danis, it's going to be a problem, you know what I mean? And honestly, I'm curious to see how good Dillon Danis' grappling is, how good his jiu-jitsu is. Is he really that good? Like, Charles Oliveira, where could guys really not hang with him? Or could guys honestly just out-wrestle him? Like, could a normal guy out-wrestle him and stay on top? I probably think it's that, but I don't know. I mean, his jiu-jitsu, we know, is really good. So that we'll have to see. And then we see Eddie Hall get into the ring. Like I said, this is the former world's strongest man. He has done a bunch of competitions. And since then, he's also, been in the combat sports world. He also did some sort of 1v5 or something like that, where he fought multiple dudes at once. And then in his last MMA fight, it was pretty impressive. He fought a bigger guy that had a bit more experience, that was on paper a bit more athletic, that had the edge, but still won and knocked him out early. And now Eddie Hall wants to fight Dillon Danis. And guys, I think this is a mistake for Dillon Danis. And I understand, people are going to say, what am I talking about? We just saw Dillon Danis submit this guy with no MMA experience. Eddie Hall doesn't. Guys, at a certain point, size does play a factor. I mean, apparently, I think Eddie Hall is 365 pounds right now. He said he would get down to, 300 pounds for the fight. If he can get down to 300 pounds, I mean, I still don't even think that's good because, Eddie Hall is so strong. We saw this guy, if he just lands a punch on you, you're getting hurt. And Dillon Danis has shown that he gets hit. You know what I mean? Like, what is Dillon Danis going to just go for an Imanari roll? I think that's like the safest thing. And even then, you know, this could easily go wrong. And I'm not saying confirm that, oh, Dillon Danis is going to lose. I think Dillon Danis has a good chance of winning. Don't get me wrong. But is it worth the risk? I don't think so. I think most likely, I don't know. I probably would think Eddie Hall is going to win, guys. I know it sounds crazy, but I just think that Dillon Danis, this isn't like, if this was a more experienced MMA fighter, even if this was, of course, like, you know, I don't know, like Volkanovski, even like Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell's a good example. If Bryce Mitchell versus Eddie Hall, like, I think Bryce Mitchell would win, you know what I mean? And he's smaller than Dillon Danis, you know what I mean? But it's just like, dude, at a certain point, like, Dillon Danis doesn't have the experience. He's getting hit by worse guys. I don't think it's going to go well for him. Like, that's just it. And the fight has been discussed multiple times for years. I think it's an issue of, you know, will anyone sanction it? I think that's why weight is an issue. I think that's why he has to get to 300 pounds. Dillon walks around kind of like he's like this MMA veteran, but, you know, he doesn't have that much MMA experience in all actuality. But who is next, guys? Who is next on, you know, Dillon Danis' radar? Is it Eddie Hall? I don't know. I really think at the end of the day, I don't think the fight's going to get done. I mean, Eddie Hall losing that much weight, he's a pretty big guy. He's a muscular guy. I mean, I'm not sure if he's really going to be. He said he's committed, but, you know, I wonder if in a few days he's like, you know what? Maybe it's not all that worth it. Is the money really there? I don't know. So that leaves a few other opponents. I think the number one guy, Tony Ferguson, who also won. Thank God Tony Ferguson got his first win in like over 6 years as well, over 5 years or something like that. It was good to feel. I watched it live. Like, I don't care who it is, you know, and I feel bad, you know, rooting for Saul Poppy to get knocked out unconscious, but like, we needed this, man. Like, Tony Ferguson needed this, and I couldn't be happier, you know. And I was thinking for a while, like, I'm kind of glad Tony Ferguson is in this. I think this is a great relationship, him and Misfits, because, you know, he actually treats Misfits with seriousness and respect. You know what I mean? Like, you could tell he even said that he wants to fight the champion. You know what I mean? Like, he treats this like a real organization, and also in return, Misfits gets this like big fan base from Tony Ferguson, and I think both sides really benefit a lot. I think it's a really good relationship, especially where Tony is in his career. But I think the fight between him and Dillon Danis could happen in MMA. I don't know if I want to see that fight, to be honest. Like, Tony Ferguson, I kind of like him fighting these influencers. I wouldn't mind, you know, him fighting another influencer, honestly. Like, let him do these fights. Let him do some boxing. I don't really want to see him do MMA, especially against, like, Dillon Danis. Dillon Danis is a young guy, you know. What if Dillon Danis, you know, takes him down and, like, and tears something of Tony Ferguson? I don't want to see that, personally. I would rather see these fun fights that Tony Ferguson could have. You know, he could fight these influencers. And you know, not even necessarily easy wins, because, look, I think maybe even some of these influencers could be hard. Like, I know Gibb might be a hard fight, you know, KSI a hard fight, I think, for him. And so I honestly don't want to see Dillon Danis versus Tony Ferguson, but I could see the fight happening because that is a fight that I think would make a lot of money and would probably drum up a lot of attention, let's be honest. But there's also KSI. You know, Dillon Danis has been very vocal wanting to fight KSI. I don't think that fight's going to happen because KSI doesn't want to fight in MMA for obvious reasons. Like, it would not make sense. This guy has no MMA experience. It would pretty much go down pretty much as the Warren Spencer fight just went down. So we don't need to see that. And I don't know. So I think they're probably going to go with the Tony Ferguson fight. However, you know, Dana White's Contender Series is this fall, okay? So if Dillon Danis is serious about wanting to join the UFC, it has been told before, like, it is public knowledge at this point that the UFC have offered Dillon Danis and said, hey, go on the Contender Series, you know, and show your worth. You know, maybe go on a couple times, go on once, kind of like what they did with Bo Nickel. Obviously, that way it would promote the show, but also, you know, get him experience before he gets into the UFC. So if there's any time for Dillon Danis to join the UFC, I would pay attention, you know, in the coming weeks. But I think if he's not on Dana White's Contender Series, if there isn't an announcement in the next few weeks that he is on that, I don't think he's going to be in the UFC this year. I think we're probably going to have to wait at least a year. And I highly doubt he's going to be in Dana White's Contender Series, to be honest. I think he's going to need a bit more experience. I think he needs more fights under his belt. Like, it's one fight against Warren Spencer. And yes, it was a 15-second submission. And let's be honest, like, if you're a world champion, that is the type of performance you should have, I guess. You know, 15 seconds. Even though I was critical of, you know, how he did get hit, I felt like his striking definitely has some holes, or maybe he was just cocky. It's really hard to tell. I don't know. Comment what you guys think. Check out my last video where I talked about the Raja situation. You guys are the best fan-based MMA. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.